Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review, Lou Rosenfeld, with a guest who you probably know and has been on this podcast before, Uday Gajendar. Uday, it is lovely to see you and hear you.
Likewise. Indeed. Hello, Lou. Good to see you again, and glad to be back on the show.
Yeah, Uday, you may know Uday, you listener, from his involvement in so much of what we've been doing at Rosenfeld for years, ranging from being one of the curators of the Enterprise UX Conference, which became the Enterprise Design Conference, which became Design at Scale Conference, which eventually ended up re-becoming Enterprise UX, but also the first Designing with AI conference. Uday is the editor of our biweekly Rosenfeld Review newsletter. He's the one who comes up with the really cool stuff to read at the bottom. We put it at the bottom, by the way, because we know it's a real draw. Uday, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the analytics love those blurbs you put in our newsletter, even though we hide them at the bottom.
Nice. That's good to know.
It's like merchandising, right? I mean, it's like, you put the milk on the back of the store. We do the same with the content you add to the newsletter. But Uday is, like I was trying to think about how I would introduce Uday, and it's like, well, where hasn't he worked? He's been in enterprises. He's been in startups. Uday, even when I think of educational institutions, where haven't you been? You're a CMU grad, but you also are a Michigan grad like me, and so that makes you extra cool. But we're going to talk in a minute about something that I'll probably screw up pronouncing at one point there in this podcast. We can make a drinking game out of it. We'll see if it happens. But anti-craft.
There you go. You said it correctly.
Good. I'm not going to probably next time. But Uday, you think a lot about craft, and listen to me, you're a designer. This is what designers do. But I feel like you've got a very nuanced look at craft. And I'll probably mess this up too, but I remember how you used to talk about seeing design craft as like using the metaphor of statecraft and stagecraft, and I always forget the third one. Tradecraft. And now you're talking about anti-craft. Did you get tired of those other kinds of crafts and enough of that craft? And
exactly. I got crafted out.
Craft.
And, have to come up with something, contrarian and oppositional. And why not go anti-craft?
Yeah, I mean, that's so unlike you, but all right, let's go with it, Uday. So tell us, what did I not... What do we need to know about you if we don't know about you, and how does it relate to craft, or even more importantly, anti-craft?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You said it best. I've worked at lots of different places, large, small, extra large, tiny. I've done consulting. I've done in-house. I've done coaching. I've given guest lectures, and I've been at a wide range of schools and academies and stuff like that. But throughout it all, at the end of the day, no matter where I've been or what problem I'm tackling or what kind of topic I'm navigating, at the end of the day, it's me as someone who's an explorer, who's an artist, who's trying to find my way and to help other people find their way too. I don't think of design as having a specific, complete, certain answer. Design for me, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is really a personal path of self-discovery, of meaning, of value, of impact.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about anti-craft and what that means, it's kind of it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke, or sticking my tongue out a little bit at lately I've noticed across my feeds and so forth, in LinkedIn and other places, there's such a heightened emphasis on craft taste, polish, something being exquisite, precious, this kind of terminology that speaks to this kind of, highly nuanced or elevated sense of, I don't know, execution. Um, and that's well and good, and it's important and necessary. I wonder if there's a little bit of overemphasis. Um, and then I think about what it means to craft something. Typically, you're in Figma, or maybe Photoshop or some other tool that has lots of layers. Um, yes, and there are also lots of layers within each of us
Mm.
as designers. Um, Kind of the metaphysical aspect, the personal aspect, the emotional, possibly even spiritual. And a lot of those layers kind of intermingle, um, and kind of intersect with each other as we're trying to make decisions about where and how we place and position all these elements on the screen, or maybe it's a workflow or whatever it is. And so that's where I started to think, well, maybe there is something about going against the traditional notion of craft and the so-called anti-craft, if you will.
So there's definitely a God, I sorry to even throw this word in here, but pivot in the
Sure.
way our
Yeah.
field is not only perceived, but what it is, and
Yeah.
what craft is. And it's interesting. You started off by talking about uh, really, in a way, what a lot of people are calling taste. Like I know Andy Budd, for example, is talking about how in an age of AI, people with
Hmm.
taste, like designers, are going to be more important than ever. Um, but that what we bring is we have, well, those layers have to be well understood by us so that we can integrate them with the technology's layers in ways that maybe we haven't ever thought to do before. So
Hmm.
I mean, like when you describe this, it kind of blows my mind. Like you're making me think of like it's like the embodied cognition thinking. Like we have
Mm,
our own cognition, but we've also store
right.
it and put it in machines, and we have to work with them. You're actually taking a more kind of specialized, nuanced look at that model here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, tell us about those layers that are inside us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this is very much self-referential in many ways. And I'm hoping through our dialogue, our conversation today, this will encourage other folks to take a kind of introspective look into their own kind of hidden layers. For me, there's one layer that is very deeply personal, in the sense that, the work I'm making, it is an extension and expression of me, and what I believe in, what I value. There is a sense of taste, going back to what Andy Budd was saying, and how that's being manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Only because, and I was just mentioning this the other day, to a hiring manager. We were just having some conversations about potential roles, and one of the items that came up, the topic that came up, is this notion of lived experience. Um, and perhaps this matters even more in the age of AI. What is that lived experience I would bring to the table as a designer and as a leader, in terms of the choices being made? So those are, I think, some of the key layers I think about. But there's one other, well, a couple others. One is the emotional aspect, right? I find
Mm-hmm.
design to be a very deeply emotional activity. Not that I'm like, sobbing or crying or anything like that, but it's just that sense of an emotional appeal. There's a connection there, a resonance. We get frustrated, we get annoyed or angry or irritated or whatever as designers in the midst of designing, in the midst of iterations. Yes, we get feedback. Maybe we don't like the feedback. Maybe the feedback is not clear enough or too vague or whatnot. Um, but there's an emotionality aspect. And I think it's important to acknowledge it, to recognize that is part of the process of how we kind of navigate, maybe compartmentalize it. Maybe other times we rejoice in it, revel in it. And then the other one, the last one, is the spiritual dimension.
Hmm.
Um, and I say spiritual in the sense of connecting with potentially transcendent values, whether they're cultural values or values of of a truly spiritual, religious nature, whatever that is, but something that is, I think, uh, emanating potentially from a different source other than, I have to do this for my job,
Hmm.
right? It's not about it's something that's beyond the promotion, the income, the bonus, whatever it is you're
Well,
getting,
what
the extra
that is that a
rewards.
is
Yeah.
that another layer, like the sort of uh, the economic layer, like I have to do
Hmm.
things to get paid so I can eat.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what you would call that, like the real politic layer or something. Uh,
Hmm.
Maybe you could just call it economic for now.
Economic or pragmatic.
Oh yeah,
Um,
pragmatic. That's probably a better one. Hey, we're figuring it all out right here on the
exactly.
fly. Everyone, when this model takes the world by storm, you'll know it started here. Uh, let's unpack some of these. So,
Sure.
I mean, certain things I think are probably pretty straightforward today, like I'd say taste.
Hmm.
Maybe you already talked a little bit about emotional aspects. We were just getting into pragmatic layers or layer. What do you mean by belief as a
Mm.
layer? And you're separating that from spiritual.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, and yes, we are kind of figuring this out on the fly right now. So, in terms of like spiritual, I think, that's where you feel a sense of resonance
Hmm.
with some kind of value system that you really deeply hold and maybe connect with. I keep going back to actually something I wrote 25 years ago as part of my master's thesis at Carnegie Mellon. I wrote my thesis on the nature of beauty. What is beauty? Not to like prove it as some grand supreme theory or anything, but it was more of an exploration around the theories of John Dewey,
Hmm.
Santayana, and a couple other folks, Walter Gropius from the Bauhaus. Um, and one of the common themes is this notion of surrendering yourself to something that speaks to you, some kind of value, some kind of, again, transcendent quality, spiritual quality, when you come across something that is of great beauty. And I'm doing air quotes on the fly here. So, whatever that is, as great beauty. And so this notion of surrender to something that you did not expect, and it overwhelms you, and then creates this kind of emotional connection and so forth. So I think that's one aspect of it as you're designing. And I've had these moments. I'm sure many designers have had this too. You've had these moments where, you know, you're creating, you're designing something, and it's just like, wow, like this is it. This is amazing, right? Um, and I've had those moments, and for whatever reason, they tend to happen when I'm cranking away late at night. Um, and then I'll put it aside, come back to it the next morning, and kind of, you know, look at it with fresh eyes, maybe admire it, realize there's some flaws, like some, imperfections, got to update it, whatever. But there's some kind of connection or connecting moment with that work. And I know, we hear this all the time. We see it on, LinkedIn or whatever. Designers don't fall in love with the solution; they fall in love with the problem.
Hmm.
I kind of call BS on that because I think for a lot of designers, we create something that is a manifestation of what we believe in. I'm trying to get to the belief part here because we believe in something of such quality, of such craft, of such character, it embodies certain virtues. Martin Neumeyer talks about this products having virtues, that it's just an amazing kind of moment that you want to kind of celebrate.
It's interesting you mentioned what Marty was just saying about a product with virtue. It's almost like while we are increasingly ascribing human words, whether they're characteristics or something else,
Yeah,
to describe
right.
products and technologies, like it's got this product has what was it, virtue. Uh,
Virtues. Yeah.
um, we also are sort of going in the opposite direction with ourselves. We are,
Mm,
for the last, well, for the entire era of the computer, we've been describing our own feelings, emotions, even our own health in terms that come from the machine world more and more.
Mm,
So
right.
I like that you're kind of, in a way, helping us rediscover some of the things that not only make us human, but make us designers. And
Yeah. Right.
so you've got a bunch of layers. You could argue, I think, that they're human layers that pertain anywhere. Um, but it's a really good taxonomy, if nothing else. What I'd like to do is take a quick break. And everyone, if you're listening, what happens during these breaks, you don't know, but like my guests and I will be talking a little bit between us. You can't hear, but we'll be doing a little thinking about what happened on the fly. What I'm going to be asking Uday to think about, I'll just come clean, is how do we put these layers not only together for ourselves, but bring it back to integrating with the layers from the technology. We'll do that little simple task right after this. You're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. We'll be right back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using the Rosenverse. First one, where else are you going to find 100 events that you can attend for free every year, 2 a week, about product management, product design, and UX design, plus a highly engaged Slack-based community of over 13,000 of your peers. What else are you going to find in the Rosenverse? You'll find hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conference presentations and community session recordings, all in one place from a single search browser interface. And behind those hundreds of recordings are hundreds of experts, people who have advanced the field, people who are your peers who are doing interesting new things, all in one place. Why else should you use the Rosenverse? We've been advancing the field of UX since 2005. You're going to find the most advanced content on such topics as design operations and program management, UX research, and a host of other topics, from climate UX to civic design to how designers can work better in product organizations. Lastly, you've been trusting our content since we started back in 2005. Whether it's our books, our conferences, our community sessions, well, we think you're going to trust the way we've brought those all together so that you can spend less time searching and browsing and more time learning and benefiting. I hope you'll try out the Rosenverse, and I hope you'll consider upgrading to a gold paid membership because it brings you a lot more. Not only do you have access to hundreds and hundreds of recorded conference presentations, but you also get access to the Rosenbot, which is a ChatGPT 4 level chatbot that we've been training on all of our content, including our growing collection of nearly 60 books and counting. It's all there. It's all great content. And the Rosenbot is a cutting edge way to get at it. You can try the gold membership out with a trial for 2 weeks. Give it a try. Hope you like it. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. Lou Rosenfeld with Uday Gajendar. We did our little quick conferring behind the curtain, so to speak. And Uday, I guess in a way I'm putting you on the spot here. You got this new idea about the layers of design don't just they're not just what's going on in Figma. It's also what's going on in us. And I love the concept because I feel personally like we're always encouraging, especially newer or younger designers, to move away from the UI aspects and to abstract back, pan back, which often leads in a direction of things like service design or systems thinking or information architecture or other things that are not necessarily visible, but are maybe, really nuanced and really, really, really important. But again, they tend to be a little ambiguous or conceptual, and that's hard for us to grasp. But you're, in a way, you're telling us not to pan back, but to pan inwardly, so to
Yes,
speak.
that's right. Yeah.
But you dug into the layers. You gave us some good ideas for layers. Now, how do we connect those layers? Here's the hard part that I'll put you on the spot for. How do we connect those layers back to the technology, back to the Figma screen, back to whatever software we're going to be using 6 months from now?
Yeah. That is the challenge indeed. I'm not sure there's any clear-cut correct or right answer here. But I would say that a lot of this kind of goes back to what Donald Schoen had talked about in his book, The Reflective Practitioner. How can we, as designers, and especially those of us who are, a little bit, younger on the junior side, we're just entering the field. Yes, you may be caught up in the, I don't know, the hype or the excitement or even just the grind of cranking out Figma mockups. At the same time, I want to encourage folks to think more deeply about themselves and what's happening in terms of internal rhythms. Um, Again, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, and yes, of course, the economic, pragmatic level. What's happening with you inside as you're doing the work, so that you can develop this sense of self-awareness of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
your own kind of ups and downs and those kind of rhythms, your ebbs and flows, to know when you are at your optimal best, to know when maybe not so much, um, and trying to create a sense of it's almost like a, I don't know, self-portrait or the age of the selfie, right? So what is your internal selfie? What does that look like to you?
Hmm.
Um, and how does that evolve and change? I'm going to tie this back actually to career path development. How does that evolve as a designer who is starting to learn to navigate these altitudes of abstraction, these scopes of intervention, all these kinds of things? Because things do get more complicated
Mm-hmm.
over time. That's the expectation as you want to become more of a leader, and take on more responsibility, going from like a senior designer to a lead to a principal to architect, et cetera, et cetera. As you take on those roles and responsibilities, there's a lot going on inside you. You're probably going to become much more, hopefully, nuanced and develop this kind of profound sense of who you are in terms of your value systems, the virtues you want to apply to the product, how you want to defend and advocate for them, particularly with cross-functional audiences who may not resonate with you, or have very different, contrasting perspectives. Um, and so that moment, so what I want to do is to kind of tie it back to that moment when you are moving, some component, some pixels, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
in Figma, snapping them into auto layout, whatever. When you're doing that, hopefully you're doing that with a level and depth of conscientiousness. Um, And that's what's guiding you, as opposed to, well, the Jira ticket said this, the PRD said this, the PM said that, et cetera, et cetera. It's about letting not those voices guide you, but allowing your internal voice and your internal rhythms kind of you, move you and the choices that you make on that canvas.
It's hard to do that, obviously, because you have to abstract yourself back from
Yeah,
your most immediate self that is interacting with the world at the moment, is distracted, is
right.
under pressure,
Yeah,
and so
right.
forth. And part of me thinks that it might be what you're talking about might lend itself very nicely to a group activity of some sort. Like if I was running a
Yeah,
design team, I would want my people to help each other do what you're suggesting, because it's, again, really hard for them to do on their own. It forces you to kind of step outside yourself, which is work. It's
I
a
agree
lot of work.
completely. Yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing, though, you I think you used the term cadence at least a couple times in there,
Hmm.
and which is like That sets off good alarms for me. It's one of my favorite concepts, and it also, I think, pairs quite nicely with another one of my favorite concepts, which is pace layers. I
Ah,
mean,
yes.
pace layer. You're talking about layers. Stuart Brand is talking about pace layers. A lot of the listeners are
Right.
very familiar with that. It's like the real drinking game when you're around me is how long will it take me to, and how often will I mention that the pace layer model. But everyone, listen, if you don't know Stuart Brand's pace layering model, you should. Go look it up. We'll put a link in the show notes. That said, I wonder if a way to kind of think about the layers you're talking about here, both human
Mhm.
and otherwise, would be to map them into some sort of pace layer model where the pace
Mhm.
varies. Maybe
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. That
I,
could be interesting, especially when you think about the pace, literally the rate of change,
mm-hmm.
how that evolves over time, the time of quarters, right? In terms of quarterly development. And then annually, you start thinking about performance reviews,
Yep.
you're up for a promotion, or you think you should be up for a promotion, and so forth. And then you kind of track it back. A lot of this kind of happens in retrospect. And then you start to realize your growth curve, I guess, and how things changed, those layers and the pace of change and so forth, how that's evolved over time.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Uday, this is something that I know you're just at the beginning of the journey here, but I think it's going to be a really fruitful one, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you go with it. I think you have
Yeah.
a lot
Thank
of.
you.
This
Yeah.
could be very helpful for a lot of people and for teams. I mean, like one of the beauties of having a layered uh, approach, especially if you can integrate both the human and the non-human, is it gives you a
Sure.
good auditing tool. If I'm a manager and I'm trying to understand how my not only my design is coming along of whatever the product is, but also how my designers
Hmm.
are coming along. There
Yeah.
may be some
Right.
interesting auditing that can be organized by the layers you're describing here.
I'm very inspired. I think right after we get off this podcast recording, maybe I'll jump into ChatGPT or Lovable and build a prototype, what that might look like.
Well, holy crap! We better end this thing while you got the energy and the idea. So, but I can't let you go just yet because you are on a Rosenfeld Review podcast, and I don't want our listeners to have my head on a pike if I don't get a gift from you for them, because
Oh,
that's what we do
right.
here.
Yes,
Every guest
that's
has to
right.
bring
Right.
a gift. You better have brought a gift today, or I'm in deep trouble.
Oh, we don't want you to be in trouble for sure. And I love this ritual that you've got. And I do actually have a gift.
Whew.
And it is um, a book that I purchased
Books are
in
good.
Seattle. Yeah, it's a book called The Way Forward by Young Pueblo. And it seems to be part of a trilogy of books. Um, what's really interesting about this book is it is effectively a collection of poems
Hmm.
around growth, renewal, discovery, self-development, and so forth. And I happened to come across this book at a pretty intense time, a distressing time, when I was planning to quit a job because things were kind of grim and tough. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I'm like, geez, this is pushing me in all kinds of different directions. Um, but I came across this book and I just started to randomly, flip through it right there in the bookshop, and start reading some of these poems. And some of them are short, some are long, and it just captivated me. And I knew I just had to buy this book. And this was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and I still got it. And I've got tons of dog-eared pages that I keep referring back to it. So yeah, The Way Forward, highly recommend it. Maybe it'll help you
It so,
and our listeners.
and it helped you. kind of recenter in that job?
It did actually. It made me kind of talk me down off the ledge, so to speak, and decided to stick it out. And eventually, I got a promotion and took on some new responsibilities, some exciting new chapter of my career path, and so forth. So yeah, I'm glad I found the book, and it kept me centered and it kept me going.
Well, the title, "The Way Forward," may also pertain nicely to some of the ideas that you're working on. So, Uday,
Maybe.
thanks for talking about anti-aircraft. Oops!
There you go.
Everyone drink anti-craft. But I like saying anti-aircraft. I had to throw it in there. Oops, I did it again.
Sure.
Anyway, thanks so much for joining us today, Uday. You're a good friend
You bet.
and
Thank
a
you.
good friend of the community, and it's always great to talk with you.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Lou.
Hey, it's Lou. Thank you for listening to the latest Rosenfeld Review podcast. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to pop me an email, lou@rosenfeldmedia.com, tell me what you thought. Better yet, leave me the hell alone and post a review on your favorite podcast platform. Please feed the algorithm. It really does make a difference. We want to get the word out. If you like the word, give us a hand. And while I'm asking you for favors, don't forget, buy books. Support your favorite local independent publisher. We happen to be one, rosenfeldmedia.com. All those great UX books are there. So, thanks again.